the baby is super cute, isn't it?" my husband said to me during our visit to the obstetrics and gynecology clinic for a friend's baby shower. "Absolutely. The baby looks just like you." "Why would the baby look like me?" he quickly retorted, and Odessa also laughed and said, "Don't say weird things." The two of them still hadn't realized they were being suspected. I handed them a beautifully wrapped envelope. As soon as they checked the contents, they were so shocked that they couldn't move, their mouths agape. Another person threw a question at them in this difficult situation. The hospital room had already turned into complete chaos. "My name is Alicia Johnson. I am a 28-year-old executive secretary at a local company, and my husband, Elliot, is the son of its president and its future president. From the outside, it might seem enviable to marry the future president and to be an executive secretary. However, the worst possible situation occurred for me, who should have been happy. I have a lifelong friend named Odessa. It might sound exaggerated to call someone a lifelong best friend, but in fact, our parents have been best friends since their college days. We are the same age and lived nearby, so we were together from kindergarten through high school. Odessa went to a university in New York, hence we were separated by some distance, but we still kept in touch. After college, we couldn't meet often, but we communicated at least once a month, and we always caught up when Odessa came home to visit. Odessa and I had a relationship like very close sisters. When I started dating Elliot, I consulted with Odessa, and when we decided to get married, Odessa was as happy for me as if it were her own happiness. At the wedding, Elliot laughed and said, "You two really are close," as he saw me crying during Odessa's speech as the representative of our friends. Supported by my loving husband and dear friend, I was filled with happiness. However, a shadow slowly began to cast over my happiness after marriage. The reason was that I couldn't get pregnant. Before I knew it, 2 years had passed since we got married. Some might think it's only been 2 years, but as someone who desired children, I was actively learning about fertility. Before we got married, Elliot and I had undergone a bridal check to confirm there were no issues. Should I get a fertility test and start treatment? I wondered. Elliot encouraged me. There was no issue during our bridal check, and worrying might just add stress. We're happy together, even without children. It's better to relax and enjoy our time together. Elliot's warm words were comforting, but I felt a rush of urgency to have an heir, and above all, I deeply desired a child with Elliot, whom I loved. Elliot reassured me, "Let's not rush and take our time." But feeling anxious, I decided to seek advice from Odessa. Odessa had lived in New York before but had returned to our hometown shortly after our wedding. While she was in New York, we only met when she visited, but the sociable Odessa quickly got along well with Elliot, and recently they had been enjoying various conversations at our house almost every week. Honestly, infertility is not something easily discussed, but I could open up to Odessa, and she always listened kindly. Still, Odessa advised, "Don't rush." Elliot also says to take it slow, and worrying too much can have the opposite effect. She was right, of course. Stressing over not being able to conceive only compounded the stress, further hindering pregnancy. I often hear stories of people conceiving the moment they give up on trying, but it's not so easy to sort out one's feelings. A few months later, on a weekend while I was feeling troubled, Elliot had left early for work. When I had a lot of time alone, I often found myself overthinking. Just then, the doorbell rang. "Alicia, are you there? I bet you're brooding over something alone, right? Surprise? I brought a special treat today." As always, what a wonderful friend. Odessa had brought my favorite cake for her visit. Recently, Odessa had been busy and visits on the weekends had become less frequent. With Elliot away at work and me alone at home, Odessa's visit was truly like a blessing from heaven. "Odessa, I love you," I exclaimed as I hugged Odessa. How did she know I was alone today? Elliot was away for the weekend, and I hadn't told her he was out today. At that moment, I didn't harbor any suspicions. I just enjoyed Odessa's visit. As we chatted about trivial things, Odessa suddenly said, "Actually, I've met someone interesting after a long time." She reported this with a voice filled with joy. "Do you have a boyfriend? What's he like?" My excitement grew too. "No, not a boyfriend, you know." Odessa smiled as if she was hiding something. I felt a slight discomfort, but they weren't officially dating yet. It seemed like that kind of situation, so I asked for more details. Odessa had always had very high standards. Being beautiful but modest, Odessa naturally attracted male attention, and it was understandable why she had such high expectations. What kind of person would meet Odessa's standards? Out of curiosity, I kept asking more questions. "He's really my type. He's so kind, and he fulfills all my wishes. Plus, he's a future president, has money, is good at DIY, and manly too," Odessa said. That was so typical of Odessa. "You always said you wanted someone handsome, kind, and rich." Odessa had hoped to meet someone who met these criteria in New York, but she hadn't found anyone and returned home. It was unexpected for her to meet the ideal match in our hometown. "Do you have a photo of him?" I asked. "I couldn't get one," she replied. For a moment, the description of being a future president and good at DIY reminded me of Elliot. The similarities to Elliot concerned me, and I continued to ask questions. "What kind of work does he do? Where did you meet him?" I asked. But when it came to specifics, Odessa didn't provide any details. Yet there could be other future presidents who were good at DIY. It piqued my curiosity a bit, but since it's rude to pry into things she didn't want to talk about among close friends, I decided to drop the subject. Though we enjoyed a lively conversation for a while, Odessa suddenly remembered she had something to do and said, "Oh, I forgot I have an errand to run. Alicia, see you later," and hurried home. Elliot was also going to be late tonight. Recently, due to his busy work schedule, Elliot often stayed at a hotel near his office on weekdays and spent most of the weekends away from home on business entertainment. During that time, I was left at home, deep in thought. About 6 months later, Odessa contacted me with important news. What could have happened? In the afternoon, when Odessa visited my home, she looked me in the eyes and said, "Don't be mad, okay? I'm actually pregnant." The shocking news came from the unmarried Odessa. Whose child could it be? I was surprised but saw no reason to be angry. Why did Odessa think I would be angry? I smiled and said, "If you're happy, Odessa, then I'm happy too. Congratulations? Are you going to marry him? If you do, let me do the speech?" In response, Odessa looked a bit somber and said, "I'm not thinking about marriage, but he will support me, so it is okay." "So, it's like a common law marriage?" I asked, and Odessa quietly nodded. "What about your parents?" I probed further, and Odessa replied, "Please, keep it a secret from my parents. I'll explain it to them. There might be specific circumstances she can't disclose to others." When I heard she had a boyfriend 6 months ago, I felt she was hiding something, but it seemed best not to delve too deeply. With this in mind, I responded, understood, and only encouraged her by saying, "Have a healthy baby." However, after Odessa left and I was thinking at home, a sinister thought crossed my mind. Could it be that Odessa had an affair with a married man and ended up pregnant as a result? But who could that partner be? Odessa hadn't revealed anything about him, but something suddenly occurred to me. She had previously mentioned that her partner was a future president skilled in DIY. Elliot is also proficient in DIY, often making furniture to his liking for our home. Although he's been too busy with work lately to engage in such activities, we still cherish the furniture he made at the beginning of our marriage. Could it be that Elliot is Odessa's partner? That can't be possible. I trust that neither Odessa nor Elliot would betray me. However, once I start doubting, it's hard to stop these thoughts. Looking back, Odessa returned to our hometown around the time she became close to Elliot, and it coincides with when Elliot started staying away from home due to work, and when Odessa stopped visiting our house. Is this just my imagination? It must be just in my mind. It's unthinkable that Elliot and Odessa could be involved. To dispel these doubts, I decided to hire a detective to investigate if there was an affair. I couldn't believe I was doing this, but if things remained unclear, it would always nag at me. I thought if the detective found nothing between Elliot and Odessa, I could wholeheartedly celebrate Odessa's pregnancy. However, it turned out to be a mistake. A few weeks later, I received the report from the detective. The results clearly showed that Elliot and Odessa were having an affair, and it was highly likely that the child Odessa was pregnant with was Elliot's. Faced with the detective's report and decisive photographic evidence, I was at a loss for words. My suspicions turned into certainty, and I was shocked by the reality. The pain of being betrayed by my beloved husband and best friend soon turned into anger, and I thought I could never forgive them. However, considering that Odessa was pregnant made me hesitate to take any action. I decided to wait until Odessa gave birth and then confront them both. Finally, I received the news that Odessa had delivered her baby. Neither Elliot nor Odessa could have dreamed that I was aware of their affair. Upon receiving the happy news of the birth from Odessa, I began planning a congratulatory visit. When Elliot returned from work, I casually brought up the news. Odessa had her baby, I told him, and he responded, "Really? That's wonderful." Despite the fact that I hadn't told Elliot about Odessa's pregnancy, he reacted as if he already knew, surprisingly calm. "Did you know Odessa was pregnant?" I asked. No, what are you talking about?" he replied, but his reaction was clearly flustered. I decided to leave that conversation there and suggested, "Let us go congratulate her this weekend. Will you come with me?" "Me too?" Elliot asked. "Yes, it has been a while. Both you and Odessa have been busy, and it has been almost a year since you saw each other," I said. "Oh, right. It has been that long already." Elliot's expression changed, and his eyes darted around. They say people often look up to the right when they lie, so maybe I could enjoy watching his reactions a little longer. But if anything more comes to light, it might make all my efforts futile. Then the day of the celebration arrived. I took Elliot with me to the maternity ward where Odessa was admitted. "Odessa, congratulations for real," I said. "Alicia, thank you," Odessa responded. In the hospital room, Elliot, who had been fidgeting behind us, also joined in. "Odessa, it has been a while. Congratulations." "Ah, thank you, Elliot." Their interaction was awkward to the point of seeming forced, as if they were acting. In the hospital's newborn room, we were informed that a healthy boy had been born. The three of us went to the room, and Odessa proudly pointed out her baby. "There, the third baby from the right. He's still so tiny," Odessa said. The baby was facing us, and his face was clearly visible. Every baby is adorable, but this child was born from an affair. Thinking about what his life might become, it pained my heart. Should I step back silently, doing nothing, or should I take some action? However, if I do nothing, nothing will change between these two. As unfortunate as it is for this baby, a proper resolution is necessary. When we returned to Odessa's room, her parents were there for a visit. I introduced Elliot while exchanging greetings. After the greetings settled, her mother asked, "How was the baby? Was he awake?" Elliot replied enthusiastically, "Yes, he was awake. Really cute." Then he turned to me and said, "The baby is super cute, isn't he?" I responded, "Absolutely. He looks just like you." Elliot laughed and said, "Why would he look like me? How could he resemble you, I wonder?" "Because he's your child," I retorted. Elliot panicked. "Wait, please don't say things that could cause misunderstandings." Odessa joined in the exchange, laughing and retorting, "Don't say weird things." If both of them react too passionately, it might only make them more suspicious. With that thought, I muttered, "Is it really a misunderstanding?" "Well, whatever," and continued, "Look at this. A surprise present. I hope you like it," and handed Odessa a beautifully wrapped envelope. "Hey, what's this? Can I open it?" Odessa said, surprised. She still hadn't realized that she was under suspicion. Next to me, Elliot chuckled. "When did you prepare this?" As Odessa opened the envelope and looked inside, she was speechless, her expression frozen in shock. "What's wrong?" I asked as Odessa opened and closed her mouth without making a sound. Elliot, curious about her reaction, peered into the envelope and lost his voice with a stunned Seeing Odessa and Elliot's reactions, her parents also became concerned and asked me what happened. "Alicia, what did you give her?" I took the envelope from Odessa and said, "Are you ready to see this? It's not pleasant," and handed it to her mother. As her mother was about to open the envelope, Odessa shouted, "Wait! Don't look! What is this?" her mother exclaimed. Then, looking into the envelope, she stared at Elliot and said, "This is..." The surprise present I had given to Odessa was the photographic evidence of her affair with Elliot, provided by the detective. The photos clearly showed Elliot's face, leaving no room for doubt. "Are you Alicia's husband?" her mother asked Elliot, seeking confirmation. Elliot looked down, unable to respond. At that moment, an angry voice from her father echoed in the room. "Silence solves nothing. Say something." Odessa and Elliot trembled under the force of his voice. Her mother pressed Odessa, saying, "Didn't you say he don't acknowledge the child? You said you wouldn't marry, but would raise him together. How could you plan to do that with Alicia's husband?" Odessa was at a loss for words, merely stammering, What on earth were you thinking? To do this with someone else's husband, especially Alicia's your longtime friend. Why would you do such a thing? Don't that just stay silent. You must have something to say." As her father raised his voice further, Odessa simply remained silent, bowing her head. "Do you think staying silent will solve anything?" But I would not allow it to end there. I directly confronted Odessa. "Why did you betray me?" To that, Odessa responded defiantly, "It is not fair. I've always been more popular. Why should you get to marry someone handsome and wealthy like Elliot? Why did it turn out this way? I should have been the one to marry him. Everyone envied you for marrying Elliot. Plus, you couldn't have children, but I got pregnant right away. That means I am more suitable for Elliot." This was Odessa's true character. I had always known she was disliked by many. However, I never expected her to act this way towards me. Elliot remained silent, just looking down. He was probably swept away before he knew it, pursued by the beautiful Odessa. "Why not invite your father too, since we're celebrating?" It is his first grandchild, after all, I suggested while pulling out my phone. Elliot pleaded, "Wait. Please, don't do that." But I ignored him and made the call. When I briefly explained the situation over the phone, my father-in-law, the president, immediately came to the hospital. I showed him the evidence of Elliot's affair, and he was speechless, saying, "What have you done?" When his father arrived, Elliot was visibly shaken and pale. He had been raised strictly as the future president since he was a child. The president, his father, was the person Elliot feared the most. His father, who always valued honesty, was furious at Elliot's actions and shouted, "Do you understand what you've done? Someone who behaves like this cannot be my son. Never show your face to me again." Elliot, who had been silent, pleaded tremblingly, "Please wait." It was just a moment of weakness. I succumbed to temptation. I swear it won't happen again. Please forgive me. However, his father snapped, "You're apologizing to the wrong person." Then Elliot turned to me and begged, "I am truly sorry. My heart belongs only to you, Alicia. Really. I want us to start over." It was all too convenient. As I watched coldly, Odessa exclaimed, "Wait! Why am I being made out to be the villain? This is mutual, and to say it was just a moment of weakness is terrible. Didn't Tichu tell me Odessa is the best?" "Lies. I never said that. I love only Alicia," Elliot retorted. At that moment, the blame game between Odessa and Elliot intensified, and the atmosphere turned hostile. "I've had enough. Be quiet," Elliot's father shouted, and both were too frightened to move. "Elliot, you are leaving the company. I cannot allow you to take over this company. From now on, you must make your own way in life," Elliot's father declared. Following his declaration, Odessa's father also spoke gravely. "Odessa, I can't support you anymore. Leave the house." Upon receiving this disownment from her parents, both were completely isolated. Disgusted by the scene, I declared to them, "I will file for divorce and take my share of the property. After that, you two can be happy together." However, Elliot desperately pleaded, "Wait, Alicia. Forgive me, let this start over, shall we?" "No! Every time I see you, I'm reminded of both of you. Never appear before me again. If I am cornered, I will call the police." "Father-in-law, that's acceptable, right?" I asked him for confirmation. He immediately responded, "Of course. Please proceed as you wish, Alicia. I am truly sorry." Hearing this, I pulled out the divorce papers right there and made the sobbing Elliot sign them. Afterwards, I bid my farewell to Odessa's parents and left the hospital room alone. The divorce was completed without issue, and Elliot paid me a lump sum for the property division. Ultimately, the conflict between Odessa and Elliot escalated from an argument in the hospital room to a fierce quarrel, and despite having a child, they ended up separating. Presumably, Odessa decided to cut ties with Elliot because he lost his position as the future president. The child was ultimately taken in by Odessa's parents, and both economically distressed and driven out of their home, Odessa and Elliot exhausted their savings paying alimony and are now desperately working to make ends meet. I also contemplated resigning, but Elliot's father told me, "If you don't mind, I would like you to continue working with me," and ultimately, I continued as his secretary. While some in the office gossip, the majority of my colleagues encourage me, saying life is still ahead, and have started reaching out to foster new connections. I never imagined I would lose both my husband and best friend at the same time, but life is filled with unpredictable events. I will continue to walk the righteous path and live